The Karen wing of the Democratic Party wants to defund ICE. Now, we've seen this vampire movie before. The Karen wing of the Democratic Party also wanted us to defund the police.
But we need to completely dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department.
It is outdated, it is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
So yes, defund your butts. Defund you.
The police department here in Minneapolis needs to be dismantled, and we need to start anew.
Defunding police means defunding police.
Imagine that. Yeah, I don't know if we need any more imagination from Democrats. What we need is more cops on the street, not disparaging cops who bust their tail, put on the uniform, go protect our neighborhoods every night. Less imagination, more cops on the street, more prosecutors who will actually put bad guys in jail. And maybe just a stop to all the crazy policies. One of our colleagues introduced a bill, No Money Bail Act, just getting rid of it. But I don't think Democrats want to do the common sense thing. They want to do what that video just talked about. They want to defund the police. They've said it time and time again.
Room goes silent the moment Senator Kennedy and Jim Jordan step in. And it's not the loud, dramatic kind of silence. It's that uncomfortable pause where everyone kind of realizes, okay, this just got real. What follows isn't a typical political exchange. It's a straight, no-nonsense pushback aimed at Ilhan Omar, AOC, and Chuck Schumer, calling out policy contradictions, internal party pressure, and that growing gap between political messaging and what actually gets done in Washington. And as someone in the room reportedly reacted, laughs, it got so quiet you could almost hear the talking points getting rewritten on the spot. You know the kind of moment where people aren't even reacting out loud anymore. They're just thinking it. Okay, that landed. So here's what's actually going on in plain English.
What's about to happen is top of the list, king of the hill, number one, stupid. And it's happening just not because of policy. It's happening because of raw gut politics. If you could see what I see, your gag reflex would be permanently triggered. Here's what's going on. The Karen wing of the Democratic Party is in control of the Democratic Party. And the Karen wing of the Democratic Party, not all Democrats, but there's clearly a Karen wing. Sometimes I call them the loon wing. They have gone to the Minority Leader Jeffries and my friend Senator Schumer and said, don't you vote for that Homeland Security bill. Why? Because the Karen wing of the Democratic Party wants to defund ICE. Now, we've seen this vampire movie before. The Karen wing of the Democratic Party also wanted us to defund the police. How'd that work out for us? The criminals are still laughing. Now they want to defund ICE. And Senator Schumer and Minority Leader Jeffries, two good men, they've made a bunch of unreasonable demands that no person with a brain above a single-cell organism would vote for. It would put handcuffs on ICE. That's just a fact. And they know that. I'm not going to vote for them. Sure not going to vote for them with a gun to my head. Now, but I'll tell you the reality. We could go to Senator Schumer and the Minority Leader in the House and say, okay, we accept every one of your conditions. The Democrats still are not going to vote to keep DHS open. I mean, I don't blame Senator Schumer for trying, but he's kind of wandering around here like one of those Roombas. He looks like a man who's lost his luggage at the airport. I mean, he's making these demands, and if we accepted them, we're not. But if we did, he couldn't deliver the votes. Because nobody on my side of the aisle wants to defund ICE. And that's what this is all about. The Karen wing of the Democratic Party has told every single Democrat, if you don't vote to shut down DHS, if you do vote to fund ICE, we will punish you politically the rest of your natural lives. That's why we're about to have a shutdown. Now, this stuff isn't complicated. Here's what I think most Americans believe. Illegal immigration, Mr. President, is illegal. Duh. If none of us are above the law, I believe that. I bet you believe that. If no one is above the law, how come people in our country illegally are above the law? Immigration statutes are not some second-tier laws that you can violate without consequence. It's the law. If you don't like it, change it. If you act like a butthead with a cop or an ICE officer, it's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. Here's a little tip. It's free. Cops will leave you alone unless you do illegal stuff. But the Karen wing of the Democratic Party is the cause of this. And they're going to have to accept the fact that the law is the law, or they're going to have to get the votes to change it. Because the American people see immigration like they see the front door of their home. Most Americans lock their front door at night. Why do they do that? They don't lock their front door at night because they hate everybody on the outside. They lock the front door at night because they love the people on the inside. And they want to know who's coming into and out of their home. And that's the way the American people see our borders. Legal immigration, great. We admit more people, more of our world's neighbors, to come to America and become part of us every year than any other country. And the whole world knows it. That's why everybody wants to come here. When's the last time you heard of somebody trying to sneak into China? I want to come here. It's called legal immigration. But you can't jump the line. You got to fill out the forms and be properly vetted. You can't just come in. Now, President Biden didn't follow the law. That's why we're in this mess today.
There's a real divide in Washington right now over immigration enforcement. One side is pushing for stronger enforcement through agencies like ICE and DHS. The other side is calling for major restructuring. Some even want to scale back or eliminate certain enforcement functions altogether. Now, that disagreement isn't new. What makes this moment more intense is where it's happening, right inside debates over government funding and national security operations. So instead of a clean policy debate, it turns into a high-stakes negotiation over how the country enforces its own laws. And that's where things start to tighten up. Wow, this is where it gets complicated. When you break down the response from Senator Kennedy and Jim Jordan, their argument is actually pretty straightforward. They're basically saying the law already exists. The question isn't whether immigration law is clear, it's whether it's being enforced consistently. From their point of view, agencies like ICE and DHS aren't political bargaining chips. They're enforcement tools created by Congress. So when funding or authority gets tied up in political conditions, it raises a bigger constitutional question. Who actually controls enforcement? And that's not a small issue. That's a structural one. On the other side, critics like Ilhan Omar and AOC argue for major reform in how immigration enforcement operates. Their focus is on accountability, oversight, and reducing what they view as overly aggressive enforcement practices. So you've got two very different philosophies colliding here. One focused on enforcement and consistency, the other focused on restructuring and reform. And then Chuck Schumer ends up right in the middle of it. He's balancing pressure from the more progressive wing of his party while also trying to keep government funding bills moving so agencies don't grind to a halt. And honestly, that's where you can almost hear the political tension kick in. That's a tightrope walk. So what happens next is predictable, but still messy. Policy debates start bleeding into funding fights. Funding fights start shaping policy outcomes, and suddenly it's not just about immigration anymore. It's about how governance itself is being negotiated in real time. And for the average person watching all this unfold, it doesn't always feel like leadership. It feels more like a long, ongoing argument over who gets to define how basic laws are enforced. Here's the part that really stands out. When enforcement of laws starts depending on political negotiation instead of legal structure, you don't just have disagreement, you start blurring the line between law and preference. And once that happens, the system stops feeling predictable. Because now the question isn't just what the law is, it's whether it's going to be enforced today. And that's when you get those moments where people just sit back and go, wow, that's not how this is supposed to feel.